Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth. Still in my breath of life, I will confess I love this cultured hell that tests my youth. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood, giving me strength erect against her hate. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood, yet as a rebel fronts a king in state. I stand within her walls with not a shred of terror, malice, not a word of jeer. Darkly I gaze into the days ahead and see her might and granite wonders there. Beneath the touch of time's unerring hand, like priceless treasure sinking in the sand. Before the brave, before the proud builders and workers, I say I want the wide American earth. Its beautiful rivers and long valleys and fertile plains, its numberless hamlets and expanding towns and towering cities, its limitless frontiers, its probing intelligence, for all the free. Free men everywhere in my land, this wide American earth. Do not wander homeless and are not alone. Friendship is our bread, love our air. And we call each other comrade, each growing with the other, each a neighbor to the other, boundless in freedom. I say I want the wide American earth. I say to you, defenders of freedom, builders of peace. I say to you, democratic brothers, comrades of love. Their judges lynch us, their police haunt us, their armies and navies and airmen terrorize us. Their thugs and stoolies and murderers kill us. They take away our bread from our children. They ravage our women. They deny life to our elders. But I say we have the truth. On our side, we have the future with us. We are millions everywhere, on seas and oceans and lands, in air, on water, and all over this very earth. We are millions working together. We are building, creating, molding life. We are shaping the shining structures of love. We are everywhere. We are everywhere. We are there when they sentence us to prison for telling the truth. We are there when they conscript us to fight their wars. We are there when they throw us in concentration camps. We are there when they come at dawn with their guns. We are there. We are there. And we say to them, you cannot frighten us with your bombs and deaths. You cannot drive us away from our land with your hate and disease. You cannot starve us with your war programs and high prices. You cannot command us with your nothing because you are nothing but nothing. You cannot put us all in your padded jails. You cannot snatch the dawn of life from us. And we say to them, remember, remember, we shall no longer wear rags, eat stale bread, live in darkness. We shall no longer kneel on our knees to your false gods. We shall no longer beg you for a share of life. Remember, remember. Oh, remember in the deepest midnight of your fear. We shall emulate the wonder of our women, the ringing laughter of our children, the strength and manhood of our men, with a true and honest and powerful love. And we say to them, we are creators of a flowering race. I say, I want the wide American earth. I say to you, sharer of my delights and thoughts. I say this deathless truth and more, for look, watch, listen. With the stroke of my hand, I open the dawn of a new world, lift up the beautiful horizon of a new life, all for you, comrade, and my love. See, the magnificent towers of our future is afire with truth, and growing with the fuel of the heart of my heart, and unfolding and unfolding and flowering and flowering in the bright new sun of our world. All for you, comrade and my wife. And see, I cry, I weep with joy, and my tears are the tears of my people. Before the brave, before the proud builders and workers, I say I want wide American earth. For all the free, I want the wide American earth for my people. I want my beautiful land. I want it with my rippling strength and tenderness, for of love and light and truth, for all the free. I read two poems at the same time. The first one I read was Claude McKay's poem America, where he talks about the difficulties of being on a land that's so bountiful, so plentiful, so filled with opportunity, and yet it is contrasted with its hate. It's like that love hate relationship. And as you know, Claude McKay was a immigrant from Jamaica who came to the United States after coming from a poor background. And he ended up in the Harlem Renaissance, and he is the epitome of Harlem writers. If you had to name the top 10, bar none, in that whole movement, Claude McKay would be in that top 10. And he is very bold in his speaking of racism and colorism and the seedier side of Harlem if you go read his poetry and his work. I'm on Jesse Redmond Fawcett right now. Well, at least I'm going to start that series. I'm going to segue to Claude McKay when I have time because there's so much to his work. Carlos Bolazan is from the Philippines, and I read his poem, I Want the Wide American Earth. He's widely known for not really going back to the Philippines after he came to the United States. He also worked odd jobs, then became a writer and talked about the justice which affected Asian Americans. And I think the difference between the two is that Carlos Bolazan didn't even live to 50. I think Claude McKay lived a while longer. You all can look it up. Notice that both artists talk about bread. The use of bread in this situation represents opportunity or lack thereof. Because remember, when Claude McKay wrote America, he wrote it in the Harlem Renaissance at the time when black artists had white patronages. And to my knowledge, Claude McKay was one of those artists who had white patrons who supported the Harlem Renaissance. But against that backdrop, Harlem was a small enclave that hid an ugly reality, the Great Migration, and how it was harder to make wages as a black person at that time. Because there was de facto segregation in the North, though it wasn't the whole you have to move on the side of the sidewalk like you did in the South. And yet and still his poetry conveyed the lack of bread, which is the lack of money, the lack of resources, the lack of economic opportunity for black people all over the globe. Because his work widely covers the United States and his Jamaican background, and he makes parallels with that. So I encourage anyone, regardless of race, to go read Claude McKay. Because he wasn't exactly saying he hated America, but he could taste her bitterness, meaning that if he personified her as a woman, she's complicated. Carlos Bolazan went in because he's Filipino, but he mentions concentration camps. And his bread was definitely a representation of a lack of opportunity. He went out and said, I want the wide American earth, meaning he wants all of the benefits of citizenship and that those things should be accorded to people who are seen on the margins of society. And I completely agree. We must remember when this poem came out in 1950, during World War II, there were concentration camps. So Carlos Bolazan was in the United States as a Filipino watching what happened to Asian people and recognized the unfairness of what they lost because the perception of them being Japanese gave certain people rights to go take their land and cloister them in spots. Despite the fact that a great majority of Japanese Americans were loyal to the United States and the country in which they built opportunities. What we're widely speaking on now because lots of Asian Americans are on the come up or been on the come up for a long time, in contrast to their Black American counterparts who are still fighting for some economic opportunity. And I have to be honest here and not be disingenuous. We have more Black billionaires all over the world now than we've ever had. So I call us Mansa Musa rising. But the thing about it is, these two poems speaks of the complication of the United States of America as a place that on one hand had a breadth of opportunity even in this time. You must remember, by the time Carlos Bolazan wrote this poem, America was on the rise. This is when we benefited from World War II, and post-World War II, there was a suburban boom, though there were still restrictive covenants, unfortunately. These gentlemen both could see opportunity right in their face, and they could see it pass them by. And it must have been painful to have lived that. But let's be honest, between these two races and really any other ethnic groups, be honest, Jewish people, Italian people, Greek, Americans of Greek heritage, for the longest time, even Hispanics, because they lost land in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This land had its loveliness. It had its expanse. It was new. It was a beautiful thing, but it also had its bitterness. And you'll still meet people probably from time to time who are very old, but from that generation, I would imagine, because Claude McKay was a little bit literary famous before Carlos Bolazan. Therefore, most people in Claude McKay's generation have died off, but lots of people in Carlos Bolazan's generation are probably still alive and kicking, or on their way out. But we can imagine watching as these two races of people sat back and recognized that there was a stigma based on looks. That this place called America, the land of opportunity, robbed many of its opportunity. And the thing about it is, if we're honest with ourselves, some of us, not myself, because I was born in 1980, of course, so I had neither experienced slavery nor Jim Crow. But lots of people still struggle with what it means to be America or American when there's still so much injustice around us. And don't get me wrong, this is not a white guilt video, so please don't take it that way. Because as I've said before, less than 100 years ago, it didn't bode well for you to be Italian in this country either. This is why there was an Italian Harlem, a Spanish Harlem, and a Black Harlem. But as you can imagine, these men talked in great detail about how America, for all of its beauty, all of its majestic majesty as it was growing, because America was still coming into her own when these gentlemen were writers. With Claude McKay, she was not yet a superpower, but she was getting there. By the time Carlos Bolazan came along, she was there. Bread, opportunity. What do you think opportunity is going to look like in the future for Black Americans and Asian Americans? Really, any Americans. Because these two races of people have the same parallels. They were ready to talk about it and talk about the injustices they've seen. Let me know what you think about the poems, about my commentary, and how things are going to go down in the future, as we're now in this century where no race is held back. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.